We are now going to hear from the Secretary General of the Organization of Southern Cooperation, and will be followed by the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries from the Republic of Congo.
Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Uganda, Your Excellency, President of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Your Excellency, Vice President of the United Republic of Tanzania, Right Honorable Prime Cabinet Secretary of the Republic of Kenya, esteemed and distinguished Chairman of the Inter-African Coffee Organization, distinguished Secretary General of the Inter-African Coffee Organization, Mesdames et Messieurs, en vos rangs, grades et qualités, y según lo que tengo entendido, tenemos también a algunos latinoamericanos, así que un saludo particular para América Latina y el Caribe. Ladies and gentlemen, as I have gained in the past a reputation as an interminable speaker, I have taken the liberty this time around of preparing a written speech in order to limit my infamous excesses once I'm given a microphone. Although I must apologize in advance, I highly doubt that it will be 3 minutes, but I am most grateful for the indulgence that you will demonstrate. This fair warning having been articulated and issued, allow me first to express, because it is first and foremost my profoundest appreciation that I should like to express to the government of the Republic of Uganda and to the Inter-African Coffee Organization for the invitation to address this summit today, whose topic is as crucial to the development agenda as its convening is timely. Ladies and gentlemen, as the intergovernmental organization of the South, and not merely for it, as the international organization by the South, and not arrogantly on behalf of it, the Organization of Southern Cooperation firmly believes in the importance of a new kind of multilateralism, one that adopts a framework of equality amongst parties, of equity in their relations, and of elevating solidarity rather than debasing charity. This new multilateralism demands, on the one hand, North-South partnerships which are equitable in that they acknowledge, respect, and abide by national priorities and local realities. And, on the other hand, it unambiguously calls for the reinforcement and amplification of South-South cooperation amongst countries and peoples that, whilst extraordinarily diverse in their histories, in their trajectories, in their realities, nevertheless share some systemic aspirations and challenges. And in order to build mutually beneficial North-South partnerships that achieve self-sufficiency in our countries, as well as to ensure effective South-South cooperation that goes beyond mere aspirations and achieves tangible results, proper regional exchanges, cooperation, and integration are necessary. And this summit of African coffee-producing countries embodies such an aspiration for African integration, which in turn accelerates and reinforces the cooperation amongst our countries of the South and their eventual integration. And the very subject matter of our gathering, coffee, is perhaps the most appropriate, the most effective symbol of our countries of the South. Because coffee, ladies and gentlemen, is a tree whose fruit is absolutely universal, yet whose roots only grow within southern soil. In Latin America and the Caribbean, in Africa, in the Arab world, and in Asia. Coffee also represents the structural economic injustices that our countries have and continue to endure, whilst simultaneously embodying the potential for endogenous development to be materialized into a tangible, prosperous, and sustainable reality for our peoples. Ladies and gentlemen, the elements that we must consider at this summit fall under two general categories: short-term measures to address the structural issues with the coffee industry as it currently stands, and medium-term measures in order to transform the coffee sector within our countries. In 2021 alone, the value of the global coffee trade, not even taking into account the consumer market value of $466 billion, amounted to over $36 billion. Yet, not only do our coffee-producing and exporting countries only benefit from as little as 5% of the end market prices, but we are also exposed to the whims of the international commodity market, setting the prices which keep fluctuating for our produce. Even well-intentioned initiatives to address this issue, such as the Fair Trade Foundation, which has recently increased quite generously, apparently, the fair trade minimum price per pound to $1.80 for washed Arabica and $1.20 for natural Robusta. Even those well-intentioned initiatives do not address the root causes of the problem. When the international commodity market prices plummet, this does not in the least reduce the cost of coffee growers, 25 million of whom are smallholder farmers. Yet the minimum prices set by the Fair Trade Foundation are the same everywhere, despite the fact that the living costs, the production costs, are different in each of our countries. In other words, despite appearances, even initiatives that aim to ensure fairness in the profoundly inequitable global coffee trade are, by basing themselves on the whims of the international market, nothing more than a price guarantee for retailers in the North, and not a price assurance, a living profit margin assurance for producers in the South. The state of affairs, ladies and gentlemen, is not only abysmal, but it is intolerable. Our coffee-producing countries, not only of Africa, but also of Latin America and the Caribbean, of the Arab world, and of Asia, must come together in order to stabilize the markets for our farmers, as well as set prices that are authentically fair. We have done it in the past as countries, in the case of oil. We can do it again today in the case of coffee. In this regard, the Organization of Southern Cooperation is committed to work with member states and other stakeholders, in particular the African Union and the Inter-African Coffee Organization, and their counterparts in other regions of the South to make this a reality. Ladies and gentlemen, another set of short-term measures that must be implemented, especially in Africa, are those aimed to address the productivity gap. Whereas Africa accounted for 30% of the global area of 11.3 million hectares harvested in 2021, it only represented 12% of the 175.6 million bags produced in the same year. And whilst this staggering dissonance between area harvested and yield realized in the continent undoubtedly speaks to the technology divide that we must bridge as countries, but it also forcefully highlights the role and responsibility of our education systems, in particular, technical and vocational education and training. Aside from the fertilizers and of overall technology to which African smallholder farmers have limited access, there is an abundance of knowledge, both modern and ancestral, that would enable them to increase their yields, improve their livelihoods, and contribute to environmental sustainability. In the host country of this summit, Uganda, an agroforestry project in 2020 demonstrated that pruning, which consists in trimming the dead and young shoots off of tree stems, when done deliberately and consistently, ensured less water use, the creation of water reserves in the soil that can be used for other crops, and increased the yield of those smallholder farmers by 27 to 32%. Such examples, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, indicate that we must have a more deliberate approach to coffee farming in our countries, not only by inscribing in our policy frameworks a systematic collaboration between our ministries of agriculture and our ministries of education, but also by investing more comprehensively in transdisciplinary research in those areas of common interest of our countries. And in this regard, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Organization of Southern Cooperation stands ready to work closely with governments and partner institutions to simultaneously facilitate the review of policy frameworks on the basis of a systemic whole-of-government approach, and in establishing regional, intergovernmental, transdisciplinary research centers, both aspects being already part of the common program of our member states for the years 2023-2024. Finally,
thank you so much. Finally, as you go, yes, finally.
You're most welcome. Finally, with regard to short-term measures that we may collectively and respectively consider for implementation, I should like to address the central issue of green bean exports, which regrettably constitute the majority of our total coffee exports as countries of the South. As stated previously, green bean exports are not only fundamentally unstable sources of income for our countries, but also deeply inequitable for our smallholder farmers. And our shared intention to transform the coffee sector through value addition notwithstanding, at present, green bean exports towards the north, where they are processed, remain an essential source of livelihood for our citizens across the South. Yet, even when only looking at the data of green bean exports, it is disheartening, ladies and gentlemen, to see that Germany, that does not produce nor grow a single coffee tree, exports green coffee beans amounting to a value of $635 million, whereas the value of their exports in terms of green beans of Uganda, the second largest coffee exporter after Ethiopia, only amounted to $559 million in 2021. Accordingly, as another short-term measure, I move that we consider, as coffee-producing countries from the South, to deliberately prohibit green coffee exports to suppliers in the North that merely repackage and resell the green beans at a premium. Their clients should have to redirect their operations towards the purchase of green beans directly in the country of origin. And whilst the costs of certification, including well-intentioned ones, are often borne by the producers that we are, in such a case, the burden and cost of proving value addition would fall on the buyers. And any green beans that we subsequently no longer export must be redirected towards national and regional coffee industries which add value to our production. For the value of these short-term measures notwithstanding, as an intergovernmental organization whose mission is to contribute to the collective construction of a third way of development from the South, by the South, yet for the entirety of humanity, the OSCE remains adamant that we must, from today, invest in value addition and the structural transformation of the coffee sector, which shall bear fruit in the medium term. And at the risk of reiterating the conspicuous, coffee only grows in the South. Yet, outrageously, 4 out of the top 10 coffee exporters in the world are European: Switzerland, Germany, Italy, and France, each of whom exported more coffee in 2021 than Ethiopia, which is the largest African coffee exporter. As a matter of fact, Europe constitutes 39% of total coffee exports, whereas African coffee exports amount to a mere 7%. In other words, Africa sells, alongside other southern regions, green coffee beans to Europe, where they are roasted, processed, encapsulated, and, in part, sold back to us. If we are to achieve the endogenous development and shared prosperity to which we aspire, we must ensure, ladies and gentlemen, that the majority of the value addition in the global coffee industry occurs in the country of origin. But it is only possible if we inscribe our initiatives within a broader, systemic, and collective plan of transformation, a third way of development. Such a plan of action, addressing the structural weaknesses of our economies which generate our dependencies, should focus on 7 strategic and sovereignty-enhancing sectors: high value-added industrialization, endogenous technology development, sustainable agriculture, renewable energy, balanced and inclusive education systems, integral health systems, and infrastructure. High value-added industrialization because our countries of the South remain to this day net exporters of products with low value-added content, of raw materials. And it is no longer sufficient to produce within our countries. We must transform within them. In the case of coffee, this means investing in roasting facilities, in processing and in packaging plants, in capsule factories. Endogenous technology development because the techno-digital divide will not be bridged by donations nor by importing costly technologies. For these technologies, which are not only costly but generally closed source and proprietary, will be obsolete in a matter of years, not decades. And we will find ourselves then exactly where we find ourselves now, that is, as passengers rather than shapers of the fourth industrial revolution. We must develop our own endogenous national or regional technologies, harnessing the creative capacity of our youth and stimulating our economies, and enhance our production capacities, including coffee origin traceability and quality assurance. Sustainable agriculture, because as demonstrated by the exogenous shocks felt by our countries as the result of recent crises, we must be able, beyond food security, to achieve food sovereignty, and to do so in a manner that does not compromise the needs of future generations. Energy, because no aspect of development is possible without energy, demanding from us a coherent plan to ensure energy sovereignty. And renewable, because our dependence on fossil fuels is not only profoundly detrimental to the planet, but also exposes our economies to external market shocks, leading to inflation, reduced margins for our industries, and unreliability of energy provision for many of our citizens. In the case of coffee industrialization, this entails investing in energy efficiency, affordability, and reliability, not only to power our industries, but also to reduce the operating expenditures of our farmers. Balanced and inclusive education systems, because there is no development possible without education. Yet not any kind of education. We need an education that is transformed in order to become transformative. This calls, in the coffee sector, for the design of courses both in academic and TVET tracks, including advanced coffee roasting and blending courses, to prepare our youth to lead and grow the nascent industries centered on value addition. Integral health systems, because beyond the conspicuous, as demonstrated by the last pandemic, which may not be the last, we must ensure our capacity to protect the right of our peoples to quality healthcare. This also means that beyond curative medicine, we must invest in preventative care. This entails investing in One Health policies, involving the public health, animal, and environmental sectors to account for the interconnected and interdependent nature of our health with that of domestic and wild animals, plants, crops, and the wider ecosystem. Ladies and gentlemen, as I get to the conclusion, to please our Master of Ceremonies, it is my plan B in life. Ladies and gentlemen, this direction which we are determined to take collectively towards an approach to multidimensional, endogenous, and sustainable development, for which coffee has the potential to act as the catalyst, is one that is not only feasible, but within reach. Because we may speak at length of this transformation, we may even develop policies and operational plans for its realization, but if we do not give ourselves the financial means to invest in these sectors that are key to the shared prosperity of our peoples and the multidimensional development of our nations, then all that we are discussing today will remain nothing more than eluding intangible aspirations. We must accordingly work together as countries of the South to ensure greater fiscal space for governments to invest in those strategic areas, but also to secure fresh financing for their multidimensional development agenda on highly concessional terms. And it is with this imperative in mind that the OSCE is actively working with its member states on the launch in the course of this year and the next of a number of new, innovative and solidary financial instruments that will give material substance to our noble discourses. For as this second Africa, this is my paragraph, yes. Look, you invited me for 20 minutes. I flew here, so you'll respect me and let me finish that paragraph. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, for as this second Africa Coffee Summit unfolds, as experiences are shared, as arguments convince, as ideas are concretized to transform the coffee industry and by extension our development models, we must act with a collective, righteous sense of urgency, striving as one to forge the future instead of being forged by it. To that end, ladies and gentlemen, we must, through a whole of government, whole of society endeavor, muster the will that is necessary to transform our aspirations into action. The clock is ticking, and the struggle for a better world continues. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your speech. My sincere apologies, Excellencies and honorable members. I'm trying to balance time and be sensitive to your planned schedules. So it's not being rude. Once again, my apologies.